Linda Carter lived a quiet life in the small town of Maplewood. She was a single mother raising two young children on her own. Her days were long and exhausting, filled with work, errands, and making sure her kids had everything they needed. Despite her struggles, Linda always tried to stay positive. She believed that no matter how hard things got, there was still good in the world, and she wanted to be part of it. Every morning, Linda woke up before sunrise to get ready for her job at the local grocery store. She worked as a cashier, scanning items and greeting customers with a smile, even when she felt tired or stressed. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. After her shift, she picked up her kids from daycare and headed home to cook dinner, help them with homework, and tuck them into bed. It was a routine that left little room for rest, but Linda never complained. She loved her children more than anything, and would do whatever it took to give them a better life. One chilly evening in late autumn, after finishing her shift at the store, Linda bundled her kids into the car and drove home. As she passed through the center of town, something caught her eye: a man sitting alone on the sidewalk near the park. He looked thin and dirty, his clothes torn and ragged. His face was pale, and he seemed to be shivering from the cold. Linda slowed down for a moment, her heart sinking as she realized he must be hungry. She didn't know who he was or what had brought him to this point, but she couldn't just drive by. Linda pulled over to the side of the road and turned off the engine. "Stay here for a minute," she told her kids gently, grabbing her purse before stepping out of the car. The air was biting, and she wrapped her coat tightly around herself. As she approached the man, "Hi," she said softly, trying not to startle him. "Are you okay?" The man looked up, his eyes dull and weary. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he replied, "I'm just really hungry." Linda nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. She knew exactly how it felt to go without food, not because she hadn't experienced it herself, but because there had been times when money was so tight that she'd skipped meals to make sure her kids ate. That's why she couldn't ignore someone else going through the same thing. "I'll be right back," she promised, hurrying back to her car. Once inside, she rummaged through her bag and found a few dollars. It wasn't much, but it was all she could spare. She decided to stop by the nearby deli and buy something warm for the man to eat. After ordering a couple of sandwiches and a cup of soup, she waited impatiently for the food to be prepared. Every second felt like an eternity, knowing the man was still out there in the cold. When the order was ready, Linda carefully carried the food back to the park. The man was still sitting in the same spot, huddled against the chill. "Here," she said, handing him the bag. "It's not much, but I hope it helps." He stared at the bag for a moment, then slowly reached out to take it. His hands trembled as he opened it and saw the food inside. Tears welled up in his eyes, and he looked at Linda with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "Thank you," he whispered hoarsely. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did," Linda replied, firmly. "Nobody should have to go hungry." She gave him a small smile before turning to leave. As she walked back to her car, she noticed her kids watching her through the window. They waved excitedly, and she waved back, climbing into the driver's seat. "Who is that, Mom?" her daughter asked curiously. "He's just someone who needed a little help tonight," Linda explained. "Sometimes people are struggling and we don't even realize it, but if we can do something to make their day a little better, why wouldn't we?" Her son nodded thoughtfully. "That was nice, Mom." Linda smiled, though deep down, she couldn't shake the image of the man's gaunt face and trembling hands. She wondered how long he had been out there, how many nights he had spent sleeping on the streets, and whether anyone else had stopped to offer him help. These thoughts weighed heavily on her mind as she drove home, but she pushed them aside for now. There was laundry to fold, dishes to wash, and bills to worry about. Life didn't stop, even when your heart ached for others. After putting her kids to bed, Linda sat alone in the living room, sipping a cup of tea. She glanced at the clock. It was almost midnight. Outside, the wind howled softly, rattling the windows. Normally, she would have gone to bed by now, but tonight, sleep seemed impossible. Her mind kept drifting back to the man in the park. Who was he? Where had he come from? And most importantly, would he be safe? Unable to sit still any longer, Linda grabbed her coat and stepped outside. The streets were deserted, the only sound being the rustling of leaves in the breeze. She walked briskly toward the park, hoping to find him still there. When she arrived, she spotted him curled up under a tree, clutching the empty food container, close to his chest. He looked peaceful, almost asleep. Feeling a pang of guilt, Linda hesitated. Should she wake him? Offer more help? Or let him rest? Before she could decide, the man stirred and opened his eyes. Seeing her standing there, he blinked in surprise. "You came back," he murmured. "I just wanted to check on you," Linda admitted. "Are you okay?" He nodded weakly. "Better than I was before, thanks to you." Linda crouched down beside him, wrapping her scarf tighter around her neck. "Do you have somewhere to go? Somewhere warm to stay?" The man shook his head. "Not anymore. Lost my apartment a while ago. Been surviving ever since." Her heart broke hearing those words. She wished she could do more. Offer him shelter, a hot shower, a fresh set of clothes. But she knew her resources were limited. All she could do was listen and show him that someone cared. "Well, if you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask," she said sincerely. "And try to stay safe out here, okay?" The man managed a faint smile. "You're a good person, you know that?" Linda shrugged modestly. "I'm just doing what anyone else would do." But as she walked away, heading back home to her cozy little house, she couldn't help but wonder if that were true. How many people had driven past the man earlier that night without giving him a second thought? How many had chosen to look away, convincing themselves that someone else would step in? Linda knew she wasn't extraordinary. She was simply willing to act when others weren't. Little did she know her simple act of kindness would set off a chain reaction far greater than she could have imagined. By helping a stranger in need, Linda had unknowingly opened a door to new opportunities, not just for herself but for everyone involved. And tomorrow, when an unexpected visitor showed up at her doorstep, her life would change in ways she never anticipated. The next morning, Linda woke up feeling unusually restless. Her mind kept replaying the events of the previous night, the man in the park, his gratitude, and the heaviness she'd felt as she walked away. She tried to shake it off, reminding herself that she had done what she could. Still, something about the encounter lingered, like an unfinished chapter in a story. After getting her kids ready for school and dropping them off, Linda headed to work. The day passed slowly, filled with the usual humdrum of scanning groceries and exchanging polite small talk with customers. But every now and then, her thoughts drifted back to the man. She wondered if he was still at the park, or if he had moved on. Was he safe? Had anyone else stopped to help him? By the time her shift ended, Linda felt drained, not just from standing on her feet all day, but from the weight of unanswered questions. As she walked to her car, she noticed a sleek black sedan parked nearby. It looked out of place in the modest parking lot of the grocery store. Before she could think much of it, a man stepped out of the car. He was tall and well-dressed, wearing a tailored suit that screamed professionalism. His expression was serious, but there was a hint of emotion in his eyes, something between sadness and relief. "Excuse me," he said, approaching her cautiously. "Are you Linda Carter?" Linda froze for a moment, startled by the question. "Yes, I am. Can I help you?" The man nodded, extending his hand. "My name is Daniel Harper. I'm George's brother." Linda blinked, confused. "George?" "The man you helped last night," Daniel clarified. "You gave him food when he was starving. He told me everything." Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected anyone to track her down over such a small act of kindness. "Oh yes, I saw him sitting there and thought he could use some help, that's all." Daniel studied her face, his eyes softening. "That's not all, Ms. Carter. What you did, it meant more than you realize. George has been through a lot lately, and your compassion reminded him that there's still good in the world." Linda shifted uncomfortably. unsure how to respond. I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have done the same. Daniel shook his head firmly. No, they wouldn't. Trust me, I know. People see someone struggling and they turn away. They assume someone else will step in, but you stopped. You cared. And because of that, my brother has hope again. Linda felt a lump rise in her throat. She hadn't thought of her actions as extraordinary. They were simply the right thing to do. Yet hearing Daniel's words made her realize the impact even the smallest gestures could have. I'm glad I could help, she said softly. But honestly, I don't need thanks. I just want George to be okay. He will be, Daniel assured her. Because of you, I've already started making arrangements to get him the support he needs. But I wanted to come here personally, to thank you and to offer whatever I can in return. Linda frowned, taken aback. In return? You don't owe me anything. Really? I disagree, Daniel replied earnestly. What you did wasn't just kindness, it was humanity. And I believe in repaying that kind of goodness. So please let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Anything at all. Linda hesitated. She appreciated the sentiment, but accepting help felt wrong somehow. She had always prided herself on being self-reliant, even when life threw its toughest challenges her way. Still, she couldn't deny that things weren't easy. Between juggling work, parenting, and finances, she often found herself stretched thin. Maybe, just maybe, this was an opportunity to ease some of the burdens she carried. Well, she began hesitantly. If you're serious about helping, there is one thing. Daniel leaned forward, attentive. Tell me. My job. It pays the bills, but barely. I work long hours and it's hard to balance everything. If there's any chance you know of something closer to home, something flexible, I'd really appreciate it. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. I might be able to arrange that. I run a tech company in Chicago. We're expanding our operations to smaller towns, including Maplewood. I'll look into finding a position that suits your skills and schedule. Would that work? Linda stared at him, stunned. A job with better pay and flexibility. It sounded too good to be true. Are you sure? I mean, I don't have any experience in tech. It's not about experience, Daniel interrupted gently. It's about character. Someone like you, someone who puts others first despite their own struggles, would be an asset to any team. Let me handle the details. Just trust me. For the first time in what felt like forever, Linda allowed herself to feel hopeful. This stranger, this man she had only just met, was offering her a lifeline. And it wasn't just about the job, it was validation. Validation that her efforts mattered, that her sacrifices hadn't gone unnoticed. Thank you, she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Daniel said with a warm smile. Just promise me one thing, that you'll keep doing what you're doing. The world needs more people like you. They talked for a few more minutes before Daniel handed her his business card. Call me anytime if you need anything. I'll be in touch soon about the job. As he drove away, Linda stood there, clutching the card in her hand. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could this really be happening? Was her life about to change because of a simple act of kindness? Over the next few days, Linda couldn't stop thinking about Daniel's visit. She told no one, not even her kids, about the conversation. Part of her worried it was too good to be true, while another part dared to dream. For years, she had shouldered the weight of responsibility alone, believing that asking for help was a sign of weakness. But now, she realized that sometimes strength came from knowing when to accept support. True to his word, Daniel called her a week later. He explained that his company was setting up a customer relations department in Maplewood and offered her a role as a coordinator. The position came with competitive pay, benefits, and flexible hours. Everything she had hoped for and more. Overwhelmed. With gratitude, Linda accepted without hesitation. On her first day at the new job, Linda felt nervous but excited. The office was modern and welcoming, with friendly faces everywhere she turned. Daniel introduced her to the team. explaining that she would be handling client inquiries, resolving issues, and ensuring customers felt valued. Though the environment was unfamiliar, Linda quickly discovered that her natural empathy and problem-solving skills made her a perfect fit. As weeks turned into months, Linda thrived in her new role. Her colleagues admired her dedication, and clients praised her attentiveness. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of stability, not just financially, but emotionally. The extra income allowed her to provide her kids with experiences they had missed out on, like piano lessons and summer camp. More importantly, she had time to spend with them, creating memories that would last a lifetime. Meanwhile, Daniel kept his promise to help George. With Linda's encouragement, he rented George a small apartment near the park where they had first met. He enrolled him in counseling sessions and connected him with local organizations that offered job training and support. Slowly but surely, George began rebuilding his life. He started volunteering at a community center, using his experiences to mentor others who were struggling. His transformation was remarkable, and it filled Linda with pride to know she had played a part in it. Despite their different paths, Linda and Daniel stayed in touch. They occasionally met for coffee to discuss work, family, and life in general. Through these conversations, Linda learned more about Daniel's background. Like her, he had grown up in a modest household, raised by a single mother who instilled in him the importance of compassion and integrity. Though he now led a successful company, he never forgot where he came from, or the value of giving back. One afternoon, as they sat together at a quiet cafe, Daniel shared a story that resonated deeply with Linda. "When I was younger," he began, "my mom used to tell me that kindness is like planting seeds. You may not see the results right away, but eventually, those seeds grow into something beautiful. Your act of kindness toward George, it wasn't just a meal, it was a seed. And look how much it's grown." Linda smiled, touched by his words. "I never thought about it that way. I just did what felt right." "And that's exactly why it matters," Daniel replied. "People complicate things so much these days. They think kindness has to be grand or dramatic. But the truth is, it's the little things, the moments of connection, that make the biggest difference." As they parted ways that day, Linda reflected on their conversation. She thought about George, Daniel, and the countless lives intertwined by a single act of generosity. She realized that kindness wasn't just about changing someone else's life. It was about transforming your own. By choosing to care, she had opened doors she never knew existed. And though she couldn't predict what the future held, one thing was certain. Linda Carter would continue planting seeds, trusting that somewhere, somehow, they would bloom into something extraordinary. Linda settled into her new role at Daniel's company with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Each day brought new challenges, but also opportunities to grow. She quickly learned the ins and outs of customer relations, discovering that her ability to listen and empathize made her exceptionally good at her job. Clients appreciated her patience and warmth, often leaving glowing feedback about their interactions with her. Her colleagues noticed too, frequently complimenting her for her positive attitude and willingness to help others. Despite the change in her circumstances, Linda remained grounded. She knew how easily life could shift from stable to uncertain, and she didn't take her newfound stability for granted. Every paycheck was a reminder of how far she had come, and how much she owed to the kindness of strangers like Daniel. It wasn't just about the financial relief. It was about the message behind his actions, that people truly cared if you gave them a chance. As weeks turned into months, Linda began thinking more about ways she could give back. She had always been generous, even when she had little to spare, but now she wanted to do something bigger, something meaningful. Inspired by Daniel's efforts to support George, she decided to get involved in community service. She started small, volunteering at a local food bank on weekends. At first, it was just her lending a hand wherever needed, sorting donations, packing boxes, or serving meals. But as she spent more time there, she realized how much impact even the simplest tasks could have. One Saturday morning, While organizing shelves at the food bank, Linda struck up a conversation with another volunteer named Rachel. Rachel was a retired teacher who had dedicated her free time to helping those in need. The two women bonded over shared stories of struggle and resilience, and before long, they were brainstorming ideas to expand their outreach. "What if we organized a fundraiser?" Rachel suggested during a break. "Something to raise awareness and money for families struggling to put food on the table." Linda loved the idea. "We could team up with local businesses," she added enthusiastically. "Maybe host an event where people can donate food or funds directly." Rachel nodded, impressed by Linda's energy. "You should lead it. You've got the connections through your job and you're great with people." Linda hesitated. Leading a project felt daunting, especially since she still saw herself as someone who was learning to navigate her own challenges. But Rachel's confidence in her pushed her to say yes. "All right," she agreed. "Let's do it." With Rachel's guidance, Linda threw herself into planning the fundraiser. She reached out to Daniel, explaining her vision and asking if his company might be willing to contribute. To her delight, he not only agreed to sponsor the event, but also offered to provide volunteers and resources. His support gave Linda the boost she needed to move forward. The fundraiser took place a few months later, held in the town square on a crisp autumn afternoon. Local vendors set up booths offering baked goods, crafts, and handmade items for sale, with all proceeds going to the food bank. There were games for kids, live music performances, and speeches from community leaders, including Linda herself. Standing behind a microphone addressing a crowd of neighbors and friends, she spoke about the importance of coming together to support one another. "When I was younger, my mom used to tell me that no matter how tough things get, there's always room for kindness," Linda said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I didn't fully understand what she meant until recently. Sometimes life knocks you down and it feels impossible to get back up. But then someone extends a hand, or gives you a meal, and suddenly everything changes. That's why events like this matter. They remind us that we're stronger together." Her words resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom approached her afterward to express their gratitude. By the end of the day, the fundraiser had raised thousands of dollars, enough to stock the food bank for months and provide emergency assistance to dozens of families. For Linda, it was a moment of triumph, proof that even ordinary people could make extraordinary things happen. Meanwhile, George continued making strides in rebuilding his life. With Daniel's help, he secured a part-time job at the community center where he volunteered. It wasn't glamorous work, but it gave him a sense of purpose. He also reconnected with his estranged sister Emily, who lived in a neighboring state. When she heard about his progress, she drove down to visit, bringing along her husband and two young children. Their reunion was emotional, filled with laughter, tears, and promises to stay in touch. George invited Linda to meet his family during one of their visits. Though she initially declined, feeling awkward about intruding, George insisted. "You're part of my story now," he told her. "I want them to know how much you've done for me." When Linda finally met Emily and her family, she was struck by their warmth and gratitude. They thanked her repeatedly, telling her that hearing about her kindness had inspired them to reach out to George after years of silence. "You didn't just help him," Emily said, hugging Linda tightly. "You brought our family back together." Hearing those words left Linda speechless. She had never imagined that feeding a stranger one cold night would ripple outward, touching so many lives. It reinforced her belief that every action, no matter how small, mattered. Back at work, Linda's reputation continued to grow. Her boss praised her leadership during the fundraiser, encouraging her to take on more responsibilities within the company. Though she initially doubted her abilities, she soon discovered that she was capable of far more than she had ever imagined. She coordinated additional charity drives, partnered with schools to provide school supplies for underprivileged students, and even spearheaded a mentorship program connecting employees with local youth. Daniel watched with pride as Linda flourished. He admired her determination and humility, qualities that reminded him of his late mother. One evening, as they sat together discussing future projects, he opened up about his own struggles growing up. There were times when we didn't know if we'd make rent, he admitted, but my mom always found a way to keep us going. She taught me that success isn't measured by wealth, it's measured by the lives you touch. Linda nodded, understanding completely. That's why I love what I'm doing now, she replied. It's not just about climbing the ladder, it's about using whatever platform I have to lift others up. Their partnership extended beyond the workplace. Together, they launched a foundation aimed at supporting single parents in Maplewood, providing resources like childcare assistance, educational scholarships, and career training programs. The initiative quickly gained traction, drawing attention from media outlets across the region. Linda found herself giving interviews, sharing her story, and advocating for policies that would benefit struggling families. Through it all, she remained humble, deflecting praise onto the people around her. None of this would be possible without teamwork, she often said. I'm just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Her children noticed the change in her too. Before, she had always been busy, rushing from one task to the next with little time to breathe. Now she seemed lighter, happier. She laughed more, played board games with them on weekends, and encouraged them to pursue their passions. They saw firsthand the power of kindness, not just in the way it transformed others' lives, but in how it enriched their own. As winter approached, Linda reflected on everything that had happened since that fateful night in the park. From meeting George to crossing paths with Daniel, each moment had led her here, to a place where she felt fulfilled, valued, and hopeful for the future. She knew challenges lay ahead, as they always did, but she faced them with renewed confidence. After all, she had seen firsthand how a single act of compassion could spark a chain reaction, creating ripples that reached farther than anyone could predict. And so, Linda Carter continued planting seeds, trusting that somewhere, somehow, they would bloom into something beautiful. As the months passed, Linda's life became a tapestry of purpose and connection. Her days were busy, but they were filled with meaning. Between her work at the company, her volunteer efforts, and raising her children, she found herself constantly surrounded by people who inspired her. Each interaction reminded her that kindness wasn't just something you gave, it was something that came back to you in unexpected ways. One crisp December morning, as snow began dusting the streets of Maplewood, Linda received an email from Daniel. It was an invitation to speak at the annual corporate gala hosted by his company in Chicago. The event brought together employees, clients, and community leaders to celebrate achievements and discuss future goals. This year, Daniel wanted Linda to share her story. At first, Linda hesitated. Public speaking had never been her strong suit, and the thought of addressing hundreds of people made her stomach churn. But Daniel's words in the email stayed with her. You've shown us all what it means to lead with heart. Your story isn't just inspiring, it's a reminder of why we do what we do. After some encouragement from Rachel and her kids, Linda decided to accept the invitation. Preparing for the speech was no easy task. She spent hours jotting down notes, trying to capture the essence of her journey without sounding boastful. She wanted to focus not on herself, but on the lessons she had learned along the way, the importance of compassion, resilience, and community. When the night of the gala finally arrived, Linda felt a mix of excitement and nerves as she stepped into the grand ballroom of the hotel where the event was being held. The room buzzed with energy, filled with elegantly dressed attendees chatting over glasses of champagne. Linda stood near the stage, clutching her notes tightly while Daniel introduced her. As he spoke about her contributions to the company and the community, she noticed the audience leaning forward, their eyes fixed on him. Then came the moment she had been dreading. Daniel gestured toward her and the spotlight shifted. Linda took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The applause was warm, but her knees still trembled as she approached the microphone. For a brief second, she froze, overwhelmed by the sea of faces staring back at her. Then she remembered something George had once said to her. Sometimes courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing it anyway. With that thought in mind, Linda began to speak. Good evening, she started softly, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. I'm Linda Carter, and I'm here tonight to talk about kindness. She paused, scanning the crowd. Some people smiled encouragingly, while others listened intently. Slowly, she continued. Kindness is a word we hear often, but I think we sometimes forget how powerful it can be. A few years ago, my life was very different. I was working long hours, struggling to make ends meet, and doing everything I could to take care of my kids. One cold night, I met a man named George. He was sitting alone in a park, hungry and shivering. I didn't have much, but I gave him a meal. Linda paused again, letting the weight of her words sink in. That simple act changed my life, and not just mine. Because of George, I met Daniel Harper, whose generosity transformed my career and allowed me to provide better for my family. And because of Daniel, I've been able to give back to my community in ways I never imagined possible. Her voice grew stronger as she went on. What I've learned is this. Kindness creates ripples. You may not see them right away, but they're there, spreading outward and touching lives in ways you can't predict. When you choose to help someone, even in a small way, you plant a seed. That seed might grow into something incredible, not just for the person you helped, but for everyone connected to them. By the time she finished, the room erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, cheering and clapping as tears streamed down Linda's face. She hadn't expected such a reaction, but seeing the impact of her words reinforced everything she believed in. As she stepped off the stage, Daniel greeted her with a hug. "You did amazing," he said, his own eyes glistening. "Thank you for reminding us all why we're here." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of handshakes, hugs, and heartfelt conversations. Attendees lined up to thank Linda, sharing stories of their own struggles and acts of kindness they had witnessed or experienced. Many promised to carry her message forward, vowing to pay it back or pay it forward in their own communities. Back home in Maplewood, Linda's newfound recognition brought both challenges and opportunities. Local newspapers wrote articles about her, highlighting her journey from a struggling single mom to a community leader. Schools invited her to speak to students about perseverance and compassion. Businesses reached out, asking her to collaborate on charitable projects. While the attention was flattering, it also came with pressure. Linda worried about maintaining her authenticity in a world that often celebrated appearances over substance. But she refused to let fear hold her back. Instead, she leaned on the people who had supported her along the way: Daniel, Rachel, her kids, and even George. Together, they brainstormed ways to expand their efforts, focusing on initiatives that addressed systemic issues like poverty, education, and affordable housing. They organized workshops, fundraisers, and mentorship programs, ensuring that their work had a lasting impact. George, meanwhile, continued thriving in his new role at the community center. With Emily's support, he reconnected with old friends and rebuilt his confidence. He started mentoring others who were struggling, offering guidance based on his own experiences. Watching him transform from a broken man into a beacon of hope filled Linda with pride. She often joked that he owed her a sandwich, but deep down she knew the debt had long been repaid. As spring approached, Linda's foundation launched its biggest project yet, a resource center designed to assist single parents in Maplewood. Funded by donations and grants, the center offered everything from childcare services to financial literacy classes. Its grand opening drew hundreds of visitors, including local officials and media outlets. Standing in front of the building, Linda cut the ribbon alongside Daniel, George, and her children, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. "This wouldn't have been possible without all of you," she told the crowd gathered outside. "Every donation, every hour volunteered, every act of kindness, it all adds up. Together, we're proving that when we lift each other up, anything is possible." The success of the Resource Center solidified Linda's place as a pillar of the community. People looked to her not just for leadership but for inspiration. Yet through it all, she remained humble, deflecting praise onto those around her. "It's not about me," she often said. "It's about what we can achieve when we come together." Her children, now teenagers, began taking after her example. Her daughter volunteered at the Resource Center, helping organize events and tutor younger kids. Her son joined a youth group focused on environmental activism, planting trees and cleaning up parks. Seeing them embrace values of service and empathy filled Linda with joy. She realized that her greatest legacy wouldn't be the projects she spearheaded or the awards she received. It would be the lessons she instilled in her children. One evening, as she sat on the porch watching the sunset, Linda reflected on how far she had come. From the lonely nights worrying about bills to the bustling days filled with purpose, her journey had been anything but predictable. But through every twist and turn, one thing remained constant: the belief that kindness mattered. Whether it was feeding a stranger, lending a listening ear, or simply showing up when someone needed support, every action counted. As she gazed at the horizon, painted in hues of orange and pink, Linda felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the people who had crossed her path, for the challenges that had shaped her, and for the opportunities that lay ahead. She knew life would continue throwing curveballs, but she faced them with unwavering optimism. After all, she had seen firsthand how a single act of kindness could spark a chain reaction, creating ripples that reached farther than anyone could imagine. And so, Linda Carter kept moving forward, planting seeds of compassion wherever she went. She trusted that those seeds would bloom into something extraordinary, not just for her but for everyone whose lives she touched. Linda's life had transformed in ways she never imagined, but she remained grounded in the values that had guided her from the beginning. Her days were still busy, filled with work, family, and community projects, but she approached everything with a sense of purpose. She often reminded herself that success wasn't about personal achievements, it was about making a difference in the lives of others. One summer afternoon, as Linda sat at her desk reviewing plans for an upcoming charity event, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Daniel. "Can we meet for coffee later?" he asked. "There's something I want to talk to you about." Curious, Linda agreed. They met at their usual spot, a cozy cafe on the edge of town. The air smelled of freshly baked pastries, and sunlight streamed through the windows, casting warm, golden hues across the room. Daniel greeted her with a smile, but there was a seriousness in his eyes that made Linda wonder what was on his mind. "I've been thinking," Daniel began after they placed their orders, "about how much you've accomplished in such a short time. You've inspired so many people, not just here in Maplewood but across the region. And I think it's time for your story to reach an even bigger audience." Linda tilted her head, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Daniel leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I want to write a book about you, about your journey, your struggles, and the impact you've had on this community. Your story is powerful, Linda. It has the potential to inspire millions." Linda blinked, stunned. A book? About her? The idea seemed almost laughable. She had always seen herself as an ordinary person doing what she could to help others. Writing a book felt like something reserved for heroes or celebrities, not someone like her. "I don't know, Daniel," she said hesitantly. "I'm not sure my story is that interesting. Besides, who would even read it?" Daniel chuckled softly. "Trust me, people will. Think about it. You started with nothing, faced incredible challenges, and yet you kept going. You showed us all that kindness isn't just a nice thing to do. It's a force that can change the world. That's a message everyone needs to hear." Linda shook her head, still unsure. "But I'm not a writer. I wouldn't even know where to begin." "You wouldn't have to," Daniel assured her. "I'd handle the writing. All you'd need to do is share your experiences, your highs, your lows, your lessons learned. Together, we can turn your story into something that helps others feel less alone." The idea lingered in Linda's mind long after their conversation ended. She thought about the people she had met over the years, the struggling parents, the lonely seniors, the kids dreaming of a better future. If sharing her story could give them hope, maybe it was worth considering. After discussing it with her family and close friends, Linda decided to take the leap. Over the next several months, she met regularly with Daniel, recounting memories and reflecting on pivotal moments in her life. Some stories came easily, while others required her to dig deep into emotions she had buried long ago. Through it all, Daniel listened patiently, asking thoughtful questions and encouraging her to be honest. When the manuscript was finally complete, Linda read it cover to cover, tears streaming down her face. Seeing her journey laid out in words was overwhelming. It wasn't just a collection of events, it was a testament to resilience, compassion, and the power of human connection. The book, titled Ripples of Kindness, was published the following spring. Its release coincided with a national conference on community service, where Linda was invited to speak. As she stood on stage holding a copy of the book, she felt a mix of pride and humility. "This isn't just my story," she told the audience. "It belongs to everyone who has ever chosen to care, even when it was hard. Every act of kindness matters, no matter how small." The response was overwhelming. Copies of the book flew off shelves, and readers flooded Linda with messages sharing how her story had touched their lives. Some wrote about overcoming adversity. Others described acts of kindness they had performed after being inspired by her. Example: schools incorporated the book into their curriculums, using it as a tool to teach students about empathy and perseverance. With the book's success, Linda found herself traveling more frequently, speaking at conferences, universities, and community events. Each trip brought new opportunities to connect with people from diverse backgrounds, all united by a shared desire to make the world a better place. Despite the whirlwind of attention, Linda stayed true to herself, always emphasizing that she was just one part of a much larger movement. Back home, the Resource Center continued thriving under her leadership. It expanded its services to include job training programs, mental health counseling, and support groups for single parents. Local businesses partnered with the center, offering internships and employment opportunities to participants. The ripple effect of Linda's initial act of kindness had grown into a wave, touching countless lives. George, too, played a vital role in the center's success. He became a mentor for men transitioning out of homelessness, drawing on his own experiences to guide them toward stability. His transformation amazed everyone who knew him, including himself. "I never thought I'd be in a position to help others," he once told Linda during a quiet moment at the center. "But now I realize that's exactly where I'm meant to be." As autumn arrived, painting the trees in vibrant shades of red and gold, Linda reflected on the changes that had unfolded over the years. Her children were older now, preparing for college and careers of their own. They had grown into compassionate, driven individuals, eager to leave their mark on the world. Watching them embrace the values she had instilled in them filled Linda with pride. One evening, as she walked through the park where she had first met George, Linda paused beneath the same tree where he had sat that cold night. The memory felt both distant and vivid, like a chapter from another lifetime. She thought about how far they had both come since then, and how interconnected their journeys had been. "Hey, stranger," a voice called out, pulling her from her thoughts. Turning, she saw George approaching, bundled in a warm coat. "Fancy meeting you here." Linda smiled, hugging him tightly. "I was just thinking about that night. Do you remember it?" "Of course I do," George replied. "How could I forget? That sandwich changed everything, for me, for Emily, for Daniel, for you. Who would have thought one small act could lead to so much?" "It wasn't just the sandwich," Linda said softly. "It was choosing to care. That's what makes all the difference." They stood there for a while, watching the leaves drift lazily to the ground. Neither spoke, but the silence between them was comfortable, a reminder of the bond they shared. Eventually, George broke the quiet. "You know, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stopped that night." "I try not to think about it," Linda admitted, "because honestly, none of this, the book, the speeches, the center, it all started with that moment. And look where we are now." George nodded, smiling. "We're proof that kindness works, aren't we?" "We are," Linda agreed, "and we'll keep proving it one ripple at a time." As they walked back toward the center together, Linda felt a deep sense of peace. Life had thrown its share of challenges her way, but she had faced them with courage and compassion. Along the way, she had discovered that kindness wasn't just something you gave. It was something that grew, spreading outward and creating connections that lasted a lifetime. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly bring new obstacles, Linda faced them with unwavering optimism. After all, she had seen firsthand how a single act of kindness could spark a chain reaction, transforming not just individual lives but entire communities. With every step she took, she carried that truth with her, planting seeds of hope wherever she went. For Linda Carter, the journey was far from over. But she knew one thing for certain. As long as there were people willing to care, the ripples would continue to spread, reaching farther than anyone could imagine. Years passed, and Linda's influence continued to grow, not just in Maplewood but across the country. Her book, Ripples of Kindness, became a bestseller, translated into multiple languages, and read by people from all walks of life. Schools, libraries, and community centers hosted discussions about its themes, sparking conversations about compassion, resilience, and the power of small actions. Linda herself traveled less frequently now, choosing instead to focus on her work at the resource center and spending time with her children, who were now young adults carving out their own paths. Her daughter, Emily, had graduated from college with a degree in social work. Inspired by her mother's dedication to helping others, she joined the resource center as a counselor, working closely with families struggling to rebuild their lives. Her son, Jacob, pursued a career in environmental science, leading initiatives to create sustainable communities. Both carried forward the values Linda had instilled in them: empathy, hard work, and a commitment to making a difference. Linda often marveled at how much her life had changed since that cold night in the park. What had started as a simple act of feeding a hungry man had snowballed into something far greater than she could have imagined. Yet, despite the accolades and recognition, she remained humble. "I didn't do anything special," she would say whenever someone praised her. "I just did what anyone else would do." But deep down, Linda knew that wasn't entirely true. She understood that kindness wasn't always easy, especially when life felt overwhelming. It required courage, sacrifice, and faith in the belief that even the smallest gestures mattered. And she saw evidence of that belief everywhere she looked, in the smiles of the families she helped, the gratitude of the people she mentored, and the ripple effects of her actions spreading farther than she could track. One crisp autumn morning, as Linda prepared for another day at the resource center, there was a knock at her door. Opening it, she found Daniel standing there holding a bouquet of sunflowers. He smiled warmly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Thought I'd stop by before heading to the office," he said. "Mind if I come in?" "Of course not," Linda replied, stepping aside to let him enter. They sat together in her cozy living room, catching up on recent events. Daniel shared updates about his company, which had expanded its philanthropic efforts under Linda's guidance. Together, they had launched programs addressing food insecurity, affordable housing, and education access, reaching thousands of people nationwide. "I've been thinking a lot lately," Daniel said after a pause, "about everything we've accomplished and how it all started with you." Linda shook her head, laughing softly. "It didn't start with me, Daniel. It started with George. If I hadn't met him that night, none of this would have happened." "Maybe," Daniel conceded. "But you chose to act. That's what set everything in motion. And look where we are now, changing lives, building communities, proving that kindness works." Linda nodded thoughtfully. "It's funny, isn't it? How one moment can shape so many others." "It is," Daniel agreed. "And it's a reminder that we never know whose life we're touching when we choose to care." Their conversation turned to the future. The resource center was thriving, but Linda wondered what came next. "Sometimes I think about retiring," she admitted. "Not because I'm tired, but because I want to make sure the work continues without me. It shouldn't depend on one person. It should belong to everyone." Daniel smiled. "That's exactly why we're setting up leadership training programs. We're grooming the next generation of changemakers, people like Emily and Jacob, who will carry the torch long after we're gone. The idea comforted Linda. She had always believed that true success was measured not by individual achievements but by the legacy left behind. Knowing that others would step up to lead gave her peace of mind. Later that week, Linda attended a celebration honoring the Resource Center's 5th anniversary. The event brought together volunteers, donors, and participants, all united by a shared mission. As she stood on stage addressing the crowd, Linda reflected on how far they had come. "This isn't my story," she told them. "It's ours. Every person here has played a part in creating something beautiful. Together, we've shown that kindness isn't just a nice idea. It's a force that changes lives." Her words resonated deeply, earning a standing ovation. Afterward, people lined up to thank her, sharing stories of how the center had impacted them. A single mother spoke of finding stability through job training programs. A teenager described discovering confidence through mentorship. An elderly man expressed gratitude for the friendships he had formed during support group meetings. Each story reinforced Linda's belief in the power of connection. As the evening wound down, Linda stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. Standing beneath the stars, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Life hadn't been easy, but every challenge had led her here, to a place where she belonged, surrounded by people who cared. She thought about George, whose journey had intersected with hers in ways neither could have predicted. She thought about Daniel, whose generosity had opened doors she never knew existed. And she thought about her children, who embodied the values she had worked so hard to instill. In that moment, Linda realized something important. Kindness wasn't just about giving or receiving. It was about creating a cycle, a chain reaction that connected people across time and space. Every act of compassion planted a seed, and those seeds grew into something extraordinary when nurtured by others. Her story was proof of that. Weeks later, Linda decided to take a step back from her role at the Resource Center. She wasn't leaving entirely. Instead, she transitioned into an advisory position, mentoring new leaders and offering guidance when needed. It was bittersweet, but she knew it was the right decision. The center no longer depended on her. It belonged to the community just as it should. Her retirement allowed her more time to spend with her family. She took trips with her kids, exploring places she had only dreamed of visiting. She volunteered at local shelters, continuing to plant seeds of kindness wherever she went. And she wrote letters to readers of her book, answering their questions and encouraging them to keep going, even when things felt tough. One winter evening, as Linda sat by the fireplace reading a letter from a young girl inspired by her story, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the challenges that had shaped her, for the people who had supported her, and for the opportunities that lay ahead. She knew life would continue throwing curveballs, but she faced them with unwavering optimism. After all, she had seen firsthand how a single act of kindness could spark a chain reaction, creating ripples that reached farther than anyone could imagine. And so, Linda Carter kept moving forward, planting seeds of compassion wherever she went. She trusted that those seeds would bloom into something extraordinary, not just for her, but for everyone whose lives she touched. Because in the end, kindness wasn't just an action, it was a legacy that would live on, carried forward by the countless hearts it had touched along the way.